It's Jerry Mason, Kickin Lawyer. Welcome to the Law Talk. As always, I want to remind you to like, follow, subscribe to the content. We are available on all social media platforms as well as podcast platforms. You can listen to the audio format or watch us on YouTube and also Facebook. We're also on TikTok. We got Josh doing the dances on TikTok.
All the dances.
Lots of fun. Dances on TikTok. And then also NA The Band's a local group of guys. We want you to follow them, support them. Their album Inside My Head is available for free wherever you listen to music. Just check those guys out. It really helps them out. And Michelle Allen's a longtime sponsor of our show. If you're buying, selling, renting, leasing real estate, she'd be glad to help you out. She's also on the board with the Chamber of Commerce, good community leader. So give her a holler. Mason's High Octane Martial Arts has been in Covington for 30 years, since 93. And we now have a second location in Millington. Visit masonsmartialarts.com. We'll be glad to help you out with some lessons. And then we're planning to open Jam Books and Records very, very soon. Hopefully before the end of this month. We'll see how that goes. But you can visit us on social media now. Lots of books and records. And then last but not least, Josh is glad to help you with online branding, social media, website design, etc. Just visit masonitemarketing.com. And joining me today is, when he came in earlier, the staff was like, you got a lost child here. And I was like, what are you talking about? and then when I saw it was you, I was like, yeah, he kind of was kind of like a child of mine at one point because I've known you for so long. So,
well, I saw the fear in your eyes. I was standing there with the DNA kit.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Every man's worst nightmare.
I would have been honored if it was you, Gunnar.
I appreciate
so I know him as Gunnar. I know he's also as an adult now, Matt. But we got Gunnar Huetson with us, and he has been a longtime student of mine. Did MMA, kickboxing, taekwondo, taught for me, and then went into the Navy, and is now an active military guy, officer. So we appreciate your service there too, Gunnar.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
So I know we talked a little bit earlier, but everything been going good?
Very good. Really the best it's ever been, to be honest. It's
nice.
It's been pretty.
Well, you were kind of raised though to be in the Navy.
Yeah, it's kind of a family legacy, to be honest. My family pretty much. I don't know if I was coerced to go in the Navy, but pretty much no other option for the military. Is like if I tried to go any other branch, I think my mom might skim me alive. So.
Yeah, because both your parents were Navy folks.
They met in the Navy.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know that I knew that, but
yeah, they were actually they were on the same ship back in the day, and then my mom was a little bit further in her career. So when they decided to stay together, my dad went to the DoD service and just followed my mom around. So
I got you.
And he got out.
And your mom's a chief, right?
She was a master chief.
Chief.
Yeah, she retired as an E9 here in Millington because there's the Navy base down there. So. We pretty much settled down here in 2000, and she retired I think in 2006, 2007, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But and then we stayed here. Yeah. But your ad said 30 years of Mason martial arts, and I can't think that I was born in '93, so I don't know how that makes you feel.
It makes me feel great.
When I met Jerry, he was I don't know, probably what were you think 24?
What year was it?
I want to say like 2005 or 2006.
Oh, I thought it was even before then. Hey, Madeline, you come in here with us if you want to. Anyway.
I met her. She was like 22, 23,
No, I think she was like 20.
Really? Yeah.
I
was in 8th grade.
In 05, I would have been 26. 04 was 25. So.
Dang.
Yeah. So, because I went through... It seems like you were there. It seems like you were there longer than that, though. Because
I think so.
I think I was 27 or 28 when I got divorced, and I just remember you because I think you were working for me at the time, teaching.
Yeah, I think I had been there for a couple of years before that. So.
Well, I talk about you a lot, even though you don't probably believe me or know that.
My ears burn all the time.
Yeah. Well, but it's usually bragging about you because one thing I liked about you, Gunnar, is you're a good person. I assume you still are. I hadn't gotten to talk to you in a while. We'll ask her about it.
Yeah.
But that was always an important component to me to being a good martial artist. And obviously physical skill is very important too. And you had a lot of that also. You were very talented striking and grappling. And at this point, it definitely surpassed me in the grappling realm, which is I'm proud for you. That's always any good instructor. That's their goal, is for the student to surpass them. Now I would like to think, and we may have to try it later. If I warm up, I can hang striking, but I don't know that I can hang.
I can be honest. I haven't done any striking sparring probably since I left.
Yeah, I was going to ask why.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew you always loved the jiu-jitsu, but you were so good at the striking too.
It's the hips.
Really?
Yeah, I had some hip problems, had a couple hip surgeries, and then I definitely noticed a limitation in my flexibility a lot, and I would get some pretty bad inflammation, so I kind of shied away from it. I still like hitting the bag and stuff, but as far as like a striking martial art, it just kind of limited me a little bit, and I kind of gravitated towards the grappling a little bit more, I think.
Well, I mean, what I remember is, when you were there helping me, you were one of the MMA instructors. You were teaching Taekwondo, and what I loved was when I was teaching the cops, because I was a cop, and then we would bring Gunnar in to do the defensive tactics. And it was one thing if I beat them up, because they just assumed I would, because I'm bigger and all that. But you were so small at the time, and so I would use you as the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then put you in there, and Gunnar would knock these grown men out. It was great. It was so funny to see the shock in their eyes when it just showed them you can't underestimate people, but also it was a testament to your skill because you're whipping grown men.
You know what's funny is there was a few of them. I can't remember their names. I know. So Timothy, Timothy Miles, he helped us out with a few of them.
Yeah,
he had this guy named Carter, I think Officer Carter, and he did the same thing, like knock him clean out. We saw that guy at Taco Bell, probably I don't know, a year later, and he was just nervous around us, I don't know. It was like we were just like, hey, how's it going? You remember us? He's like, yeah, I remember you.
Yeah. That's good though. It teaches them a lesson they need to learn. It's better to learn in training than it is on the street. There are people you can't underestimate.
Definitely, and it's definitely something I imagine, and I've never been a cop, but I imagine is you never know what situation you're going to walk into, and who knows what, or who's cracked down on PCP or something. Well,
when I developed all that training for them back in the day, I was a patrol officer too. So I worked on the street, and these were people that were potentially my backup. And so I set the program up with the hope of making sure that if you made it through it, it wasn't that, you could just whip everybody.
Yep.
But you could at least hold your own in an actual fight. Because, we saw people that we would train. Some people were like, I want to be a cage fighter. And they get punched in the mouth, and all of a sudden they don't want to be a cage fighter. So you got to make sure they got that fight in them, that dog in them, or else maybe they don't need to be out there, protecting other people. So anyway, that was kind of why it was so, they've tamed it down a lot now. They don't hit them like that. We sent multiple people to the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, broken ribs, broken a lot of stuff, because they would fight. But the thing is,
you're not trying to hurt them.
You're not trying to hurt them, but they gotta learn. And a lot of them go in there thinking because they're big or because of this or that they have some advantage, and they just don't understand that in combat it's not like you think it is.
No.
So I wanted them to actually experience it,
especially group combat where there's
there's
no
more.
fairness.
It's not fair.
Everything.
Yeah. So again, jiu-jitsu, it's an awesome system, but better one-on-one.
Yeah.
Than multiple people. And so you'd have some guys come in with grappling backgrounds and think, I can wrestle. Yeah, but can you wrestle 4 people?
It's like they realized at a certain point, too, the most important thing was to protect their gun and, use everything they could to just save their own life.
No matter what.
Wait. So,
yeah. Well, anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Do you think that as you seen as a defense attorney, the lack of that type of training, do you think more police organizations need to do something like that more, a little bit more intense?
I actually think it's probably more prevalent now that they actually do some martial arts, especially jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's become much more mainstream, and I think a lot of departments and officers do jiu-jitsu more regularly. I think the problem now is they're gun shy to use it because of the lawsuits that come. Now, I'm a defense lawyer, and I'll even have clients come in and say that the officers use this too much force or use this or that. And a lot of times my analysis is no, the officer probably didn't use enough force, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, because what people don't realize is law enforcement, they give you a legal order. If it's a legal order, they don't have to give it to you a second time. If I say, hey, man, put your hands behind your back, or if something has given me pause and made me nervous and you don't do it, I have a right to then put hands on you. And so a lot of these cops, because of all the cameras and all the lawsuits, are so gun shy. They're waiting way longer than I would have waited. I mean, honestly, now I probably wouldn't be able to be a cop because I would be
too much scrutiny.
Yeah, so many lawsuits on me because I was going to do my job. And I even tell my clients, it circles back to this. Most of the time, cops are not going to bother people if you're not doing wrong. Now, there's exceptions, but even when there's those exceptions, just comply, and then we'll fight them later in the courtroom. I always say the fight is not in the street; the fight's in the courtroom. And that's where I come in. So, yeah, I think they're doing a lot better at it.
That's good.
So, hey, in your other job, and I know it's probably limited what you can talk about, but what can you just tell us whatever you can on what your current job entails, what you do?
So right now I'm in the Navy. I'm a commissioned officer. I'm a lieutenant, so that's an 03. I just picked up 04, which is lieutenant commander. I'll put that on next August because it's a year process once you get selected. But I'm an intelligence officer, so it's a super rewarding job. I basically work with all the intelligence agencies that are conglomerate. A lot of people don't know there's 18 intelligence agencies in the federal government, to include all the military branches that add into that. But I basically work with all of them and produce products for Navy commanders and operations and fuse in intelligence into Navy operations.
Yeah, and so I'm going to attempt to relate a little bit, okay? Because I don't have any clearance. There's no top secret, none of that. I don't know anything about all that. I don't know where the aliens are or any of that, right? But
closer than you think.
I have to keep probably. Yeah. I have to keep client information confidential, and sometimes people in the public, or even like a case I have now, is sort of got a lot of eyes on it. Mm-hmm. You get asked questions, and then you're like, you have to think through whether you can respond or not based on, because you know more than they know, mm-hmm. right? Do you find that a struggle sometimes?
I do. It definitely, I would say the information that you get on the more classified side really isn't more different than the stuff that you would see on the news. It just provides more context and things like that, more highlighting the intentions, the why, and a lot of things really aren't classified to protect the information. It's more the sources and methods that it was collected with. So things that involve national security and things like that. If it got out that we could do this or that. But really, it does become kind of hard, especially like when you come home and people ask you about like current events and stuff. You're like, well, I don't know where I read that, so I'm just going to act dumb on it and act like I don't know anything about it. But and two, it's hard to, as an intelligence professional, you kind of have to stay out biases when you read news and stuff, because you know every news agency has their own bias and stuff that. But and there's bias inside the intelligence community. Unfortunately, it does happen. But it does have sometimes a problem with, especially when people start trying to ask you about current events, because everybody wants to know about, the Ukraine situation or the thing happening with Israel and Hamas. And I'm like, well, I can't really remember where I read this, so I'm probably just going to act dumb on it.
Yeah, well, and so for folks that don't know, you're fluent in Russian and Spanish, right?
As well.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I graduated Covington High School, so I am a local boy. Graduated Covington High School in 2011, went to University of Memphis and got a degree in Russian and Spanish, and then joined the Navy right out of college. So I commissioned through a program.
I was honored to be in your pinning ceremony.
You were, yeah. I can't remember what you give me. You gave me the flag, didn't you? You gave me the flag.
Yeah, I got a picture of that, and I'm way fatter.
Yeah.
Picture.
Where was it? No, you were still maybe you just didn't have as good looking suits.
I was a little thicker. It's okay. I'm always cool with. I mean, normally my body shape reflects whatever I'm doing at the moment. It's like I'm powerlifting and I got big.
Yeah, you're just powerlifting.
Power belly, yeah. And then now I'm getting skinny for this Rocky thing. Yeah. But anyway, I was honored. I don't know if you know this. You know that you had listed me for them to call about your background check.
Yeah.
They called me.
Oh, they called you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're usually really good about that.
Yeah. I told them that I thought you were a Russian spy.
No wonder it took so long.
I told them you're one of the most trustworthy people that I'd ever known.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I would
they might call you again.
I told them that I would trust you. I remember telling them this, that the most valuable thing to me was my children. And I said, he's one of the only people I would trust with my children. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't even remember where I was.
Well, you're just going a long way. So then you got in the Navy.
I got in the Navy. I actually didn't commission as an intel officer at first. I commissioned as what's called a surface warfare officer, which I imagine your son deals with a lot. It's basically officers on ships in charge of the shipboard personnel in various different jobs. But I had a contract that basically said I'll do that for 2 or 3 years, and then I'll automatically switch to the intelligence community once I do that. So I was on a ship for my first 3 years.
Is that SWIC or
SWO? Surface warfare officer. Okay. So I had to go on the ship, had to cut my teeth on there, and
what kind of ships were you on?
I was on the USS Way City. It's a cruiser, CG-66. She decommissioned, so it makes me feel a little old. But she was old when I got on her, so it doesn't surprise me that she decommissioned. But that was my first ship, and then I did my tour there. I loved it. But I was glad to switch over, and then I went to the intelligence community after that, and I've done various different tours throughout the intelligence community.
Yeah, and you've been stationed all around too.
Oh, very much so. That's one thing I've really loved about the Navy, is the exposure to the world. Really, is the perspective you get throughout the world and the different tours you do. And like you said, you get exposed to things, and sometimes I catch myself, you don't really realize that what you're doing is unique in a way because everyone's doing it, that you're around, you're in your circle of everyone that does the same job as you. So, but when you look at it from an outside perspective, like you said, you're seeing and doing things that no one else will ever.
Yeah, I mean, even just like you just mentioned, being stationed on a battleship, you know, most people will never experience that. They'll watch movies about it because they've never experienced it. So, yeah, you can't you know, you're grown now. I can't preach to you, but don't undervalue the experiences that you're getting. And it doesn't sound like you are, but you have to also realize that other people are like, oh, wow, you know, done X, Y, and Z. And that's what I told you I was telling Alex. Yep. So my son, who's enlisted and is now on the Carl Vinson, and they're underway right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's a little flustered because he's not exactly doing what he'd wanted to do, but it's still life experience that other people are not going to get. How many people can say they have been deployed on an aircraft carrier, you know? And anyway, so that's cool stuff. So where all have you been? I don't know if you can tell or not or care, but where have you been stationed?
Stationed, so... Really, I've only really been stationed in Oconus, but I've done a lot of deployments outside. I've been stationed in Conus, and then just deployed, done a bunch of deployments.
Because you just got back from the Philippines?
I was in Guam.
Guam.
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember. I knew it was somewhere.
Hardship deployments, 90 degrees and palm trees. But
yeah, I saw you doing jiu-jitsu over there a lot.
Yeah. I always try to find a martial arts gym wherever I go, especially jiu-jitsu. It's probably one of the anchors I have in my life. And really, I pretty much, any success I have pretty much comes back to your martial arts school, really.
I appreciate you saying that.
No, really, like all throughout high school, all throughout college, it was really kind of the lessons and the martial arts spirit that you kind of put into me and the trust that you put in me as an instructor followed me throughout my whole Navy career. And it's something I think about every day, and she's probably sick of hearing, to be honest. But it's... I think it's something unique that has grown me as a person. And people always ask, like, how, and things like, you know, why don't you drink? Why don't you do this? I've never drank alcohol, and people think I'm Mormon, but I'm not Mormon, I promise. Nothing that there's anything wrong with that, but it comes back to the martial arts. It does. Is I don't think you realize when I was in high school, it was like, if I was even thinking about, you know, going to a party or something like that, I would feel so guilty because I would think about you in the martial arts school, and I'm like, I got to represent it better. So, you know, I'd come to the gym instead. I'd train martial arts. So it's something that I always, it gave me perspective. And one thing I think martial arts gives to people that sets them aside from other people is self-awareness, is being able to recognize yourself and your flaws and what you need to work on, and give yourself a path to always work on that as a person. And it's not just learning how to kick and punch and choke people. It's growing yourself as a person, leaving your problems in your shoes when you go on the mat, and then coming back to them as a better person. So that's something that I think about daily, that I take in my life, and I really think that's a big contributor to where I am now, to be honest.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, I would say it goes both ways. You know, a lot of times, especially during that phase that you're talking about of my own life, you know, there were things that I was interested in doing sometimes that maybe weren't the best examples, and so then I wouldn't do them. And then sometimes I did. Yeah. But anyway, I was always thinking about how it would affect my students. Like, I used to not drink at all. And part of that, especially not locally, and even when I started to where I was trying to get into the bourbon world a little bit, I wouldn't do that openly in front of the students because I didn't want a kid to see me. Yep. You know, and then even though it's fine, I think it's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, with moderation, I didn't want a kid to get a bad impression now. So then now I'm sort of trying to step. It's funny how life evolves, how we have these phases. So now I'm in this senior master position, right?
Yep.
So I'm trying to step into this different level of leadership role, probably like you were experiencing as you advance as an officer. And it's new responsibilities, new position, but you're really leading the leaders.
Yep.
It's not so much about leading the rank and file now for me. And so it's just a different, I'm just learning that, you know, differently now too. But my point was, I really appreciate you saying all that, but it really does go both ways. If you have loyal students that are committed to you, that motivates you to be committed to them and try to be a better person. And I do agree with you, because I'm a few years ahead of you on a lot of that stuff, is that part of why I'm where I am and do the things that I do is because of what I learned in martial arts. You know, and so often people focus on the physical side of it,
Yeah.
which I think is important. And I think it's not important in that you and I can go and whip everybody, which we could. But my point, I think what's important.
I'm kind of old myself now.
I think we would hang all right. It'd probably be fun. Maybe we need to go pick a bar fight when we leave. But anyway, see, I'm setting such a good example.
Yes.
What I was going to say is the physical thing, though, if you're still maintaining physical skill, it just shows that you really do still have discipline and self-control. You may not be able to go whip everybody, but you still have a physical presence and helps your confidence and shows that you are living those life skills. So that's why I still, even at 44, look at, okay, you're a master. Well, if you're 400 pounds,
are you really
a master?
Yeah.
Because you got a part of being a master is you're supposed to have had some self-mastery, and that goes back to physical skill.
Discipline.
So, yeah, the discipline. And the discipline carries in everything you do. So, yeah, not to do a sales pitch on martial arts because we're both probably biased on that, but it's because it's effective. The life skills carry into everything else you do, and if you never fight a day in your life, the vehicle, the martial arts for learning those life skills is going to make you a better, ultimately, hopefully, a better human.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, but I appreciate you saying all that. So saying all those wonderful things about me, why don't you tell us a little bit about this nice young lady that you have with us here who doesn't want to be on the podcast?
This is Teresa. This is my girlfriend. We've been dating since February. So she's from California. Sorry, I was speaking tonight. She's from California, and she moved to Washington, D.C. I'm stationed in Washington, D.C. right now.
You're not Navy, though? You're... she's
No.
okay,
No,
cool.
she's actually a facility administrator for a DaVita dialysis clinic.
Oh, okay.
She runs the healthcare administration side for a clinic.
Well, you get along with my wife then,
Yeah.
who's sitting here, Madeline. So Madeline is the I'm going to butcher what you are exactly. So she's a nurse practitioner now too, but that's not what she does. What is your title, Madeline? I think that's off. Yeah, you are the person that makes sure in the hospital everyone is complying with what they're supposed to comply with. Is that right? And you do other things that are amazing.
Put Jerry on the hot seat.
I'm the
Quality director,
the
risk director,
the patient advocate,
and the patient advocate. That's right. You handle all the complaints and all the problem stuff.
Wow.
Kind of like me, yeah. But she did just finish nurse practitioner school and got licensed, so
Wow.
she's a nurse practitioner now. I try to get her to prescribe me all the steroids, and she won't do it. So I'm just kidding.
All the
Anyway,
testosterone.
yeah. So she's kind of familiar. She at one point when you were doing the Baptist corporate thing, were there dialysis clinics in what you were running?
No, we just do oncology and hematology.
Oncology and hematology.
Yeah, she actually, so she has her master's in business administration, but she's going back to school. She's going to nursing school, so she's going back to get a nursing degree because she wants to go through that. So she actually starts here probably in what, like 20 days or so? So she's going to try to transition to that side of it and do, I'm not, I think your overall goal is to do nurse practitioner as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh well,
So-
you can holler at her. Do you like to helping people, like just because you're? The reason I say that is this: what I have found is either people, like for instance, I will help people, right? But I help people, and this is going to sound really bad, but I'm just being honest. I will help people because I like winning, and so it ends up helping them. But my main focus is that I want to win, right? Madeline, on the other hand, will help people even if there was no money or nothing. She just wants to help people, right? Because she's a better person than I am, which is true and okay. But
How about
anyway,
as a police officer, you just wanted to win?
I don't know that it was it was different. I think at the time, I mean, I enjoy helping people. I don't mean to mislead it that it's not a benefit for me there, but I enjoyed being able to be the one that made the decisions that helped people. I was in charge. I always looked at it like this. I always viewed it as, I guess I really did have sort of a superhero complex, because I was like, if I were in that room with a gun to my head, who would I want coming in to get me? I'd want me.
Yeah.
I knew that I would do whatever's necessary to complete the mission. And so I looked at it that I had a duty almost, because I really did view that I was sort of had a unique, because of all the training and everything, it made me somewhat unique, and I had a skill set other people didn't have. So I viewed that as I could go into a situation that was very dangerous and hopefully get out where no one was hurt. I didn't have to prove anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't, if I fought someone, it wasn't because I wanted to whip people. It
Yeah.
was because it was called for.
Yeah.
Because I had enough self-control and enough confidence, borderline arrogance, that I wouldn't fight unless I just had to. You know, like other people would go in with a chip on their shoulder, and that was never a reason that I used force. So anyway, the cop thing for me was kind of like that, but I still viewed it almost as a win because I was the best suited to handle the situation.
That makes sense.
There's weird reptilian ideas too, that the only reason people would do something is for like money or power, and like there are people that just do stuff out of the kindness of their heart.
Yeah, I don't. We've had these sort of ethics-based discussions before, maybe philosophical discussions, that I think that most people are motivated by power, money, or fame, usually. And there are people, I think, that are motivated by altruistic reasons, but because those people don't have power, money, or fame, they don't really, maybe they don't really push a whole lot of real change or inflict change in the positive change in the world because they lack those three. You know, there's exceptions. But if you think about it, how many people that you think of that have really done extreme good or really changed a whole lot of stuff and didn't have power, money, or fame?
Not a lot.
You know, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
A few. But that was, anyway, we've talked about that. So I'm fine with altruistic motivations. I just, I think it's somewhere along the line. That's why I think, not to keep talking on it, but me and my partner, Brian, have you ever met him?
I haven't met Brian
much?
yet.
So Brian, honestly, I can't believe I would say this, but in some ways he's more altruistic than I am. He likes to just help people and be friends with people. He's motivated by having friends.
That makes sense.
Like he would do everything for free just because you're there as his friend, right? Whereas I was in court today, and there's a guy was on the calendar, and it said plea only. Well, I talked to the staff, and I go, I don't remember meeting this guy. He didn't hire us. And they go, well, Brian said that he talked to him, and he didn't have any money, and he just wanted us to walk him through the plea. Well, it's never that simple.
Yeah.
So I get there, and I'm like, look, I know you talked to Brian. This is the plea. If you don't agree with it, though, you got to hire us, man. I'm not going to do all this work if we. Well, sure enough, he doesn't want to agree to the plea. So I'm like, but my point is, Brian would have went ahead and done it anyway. But you got to. The point in saying that was this: Brian can be that way because I'm here. Because I'm going to make sure we still get paid. I'm going to make sure we still have a business that runs, and he can go be altruistic. So we work well together that way because we kind of complement that component. So I don't know when we get on that tangent. Oh yeah, because I was asking, what are you?
Why do I do it?
Yeah.
It's not like a power thing. It's definitely not a power thing because sometimes you would work so hard for these patients, and some of them are not coherent to understand that you're trying to help them. I do it because when I first started, I was surrounded by people who were doing it, which I feel like it was for the wrong reasons, for money, for a paycheck. I don't think that someone should get into healthcare if it's just for a paycheck. It is not worth it. But empathy, I feel like healthcare can use a lot more empathy than just a business. So that's why I want to do it.
I think that's great. Yeah. I think that healthcare needs folks like y'all that actually care about people.
And that's where I started. I started with just a simple, I got a degree in psychology, my bachelor's, and then I did just a simple patient care technician, and then I slowly moved up to having my own clinic, and I get to see all that different route of being that patient care technician where you get to see your patients, you get to see their struggles, and then not quite comprehending of why are we not giving these patients more resources? Why am I not giving more resources as someone who has to get up at 2 a.m. and be with these patients until 4 p.m. the resources, but now being in the leadership role is totally different where I have to deliver that news of I don't have the resources for you, let's make the best what we have. So I get both sides of it. Yeah.
What do you think, Madeline? Because you kind of got a balance of it in the leadership role, and then do you see the benefit? You deal with people that are more on it for the money. That one's not on. That one doesn't work. We had to swap it out, so you have to use my mic.
It's not gonna even come over here. Can you hear me?
Well, I got my stuff all
I got
over.
all the shit over here.
Gotta have the Mandalorian.
I think it's. I think the system is broken. I think for healthcare, for as sick as people are nowadays, because most people are not well. A good example of that is pregnant women. 10 years ago, most pregnant women were not sick people delivering babies. They were healthy people delivering babies, and then every once in a while you'd have a sick person. Now, most pregnant women are sick somehow. They have high blood pressure, they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, they've got thyroid issues, the mental health problems are on the rise. So now most pregnant women are sick people too, but it's like that in every place that you look in healthcare. So people don't take care of themselves as well. They're sicker and sicker. Like, it's a combination of lifestyle choices. And then insurance. There's so many, like, once you get into leadership roles and you start looking externally from like the actual healthcare unit into all the things that go into running the hospitals or running the companies, like, there's all of these different entities just leeching money off of the healthcare system. Like, I'm not anti-pharmacy, but like the pharmaceutical industry just like pours money into trying to get you to bring drugs into your facility. Like, that's just one example. Like, everything is like this. So they'll pay these drug reps more than nurses are getting paid to take care of the patients, to come into the facilities to get you to use their drugs. Well, just do away with the drug reps. We got to use the drugs anyways. Like, we've got to have the drugs to take care of patients. Just put a white paper and a commercial out about how great your drug is, and like the doctors will start using it. There's no reason to have like all this money poured in to the PR part of that stuff.
But the pushback is, if you didn't have all that money involved, would that drug been developed commercially? Why would they spend the money and time to develop these drugs that are effective if there's not the benefit of commercial gain?
I think what she was trying to say is either way, we're going to use these drugs. So like as nurse practitioner, physicians, either way, they're going to know about these drugs. But and I have nothing against, getting free food, because they bring free food whenever they advertise medication to us. I have nothing against them. They're honestly just making a living as well. It's just how much the resources are to it when it could be distributed between other like sectors of the healthcare system. So either way, we're going to use the drugs.
I don't disagree you would use it, but I would say there's I'm just guessing, and I'm playing devil's advocate.
Well, let's give an easier example for people to understand is insurance and pre-authorizations, because screw a pre-authorization. Okay, so a doctor says you need a CAT scan of your belly.
See, Gunnar, you just get them on a hot topic.
No, it's good. I'm learning something. He thinks you might have cancer, or you might just have Crohn's disease, or like something easy that you can treat with a medicine. So you need to rule that out. Well, your insurance is a crap insurance that you're paying a whole lot of money for every month anyways, so you should be able to get this CAT scan. But the insurance company says if the doctor doesn't document correctly in the chart with the right CPT codes, then you can't get your CAT scan timely. So they'll deny your CAT scan, and you'll have to go back, and the doctor has to waste time doing a different pre-authorization, filing some more paperwork. It kicks it all down the road. Then your office staff at the doctor's office everything's just, all the costs are just elevated, because then the office staff have to take more time and waste their time to get the pre-authorization pushed through. Like, oncology was the worst I've ever seen any kind of like silos in healthcare, because what those people need, they need so fast, and the turnaround has to be so fast to like literally save their lives. And the insurance companies can hold up like just basic testing that if you not even if you were like a millionaire, but if you were in upper middle class, you could just pay out of pocket for and go get for a couple $1,000s. And the insurance companies will be like, no, we need more documentation, or we need a peer-to-peer. And you get on the phone with another doctor that has no idea about anything oncology. They were like a podiatrist by trade and has no idea what the oncologist even talking about. And they can't give you a good answer if you need what you need or not. They just have a checklist the insurance company's giving them to approve or deny you. Like, it's a big, huge racket that wastes a whole bunch of time when the doctors and the nurses should be able to actually take care of the patients in front of them instead of having to nurse a billing and coding system. So as a nurse and as a healthcare worker, do you guys think that it's one of those professions that people go in with altruistic type motivations where they're like, I want to go in, I want to help people. They kind of have this like built up vision of what being a nurse or a doctor is, and then you kind of peel back the onion and see behind the door and the red tape of what it actually takes? And do you think that takes away from people's idea of it, and they kind of get run down by the system itself and like lose motivation and kind of get sucked into that
What do you think?
I can see why some people will, definitely. Like, at one point, I mean, I remember transitioning from, like, direct patient care all the way over to leadership. I would sit in my car for, like, at least an hour before work and just cry before I go in.
That's sad.
I can actually, like, see that, but I think some people just, like, for me, I found a different motivation. If it's, like, if I'm not going to help these patients and I give up on them, then it's just, yes, there's different layers, and sometimes it's not, especially when it comes to, like, a clinic where I can't just go up to my team and be like, hey folks, we're gonna have to run down on ratios today because, we don't have the budget or the labor budget today. I can't just say that to them. I have to word it a specific way for them to keep working, and it's all about teammate morale and all of that stuff too. So there's a lot. I do get tired of it, but you sit back and sometimes the smallest thing makes you smile, like just a patient that you didn't. I told you this the other day, like I was so happy, a patient, I literally thought he could not talk, and then I walked by and he's like, can I have a bar? And I was like, a protein bar? He's like, he was so happy, and that's just like made my week. So yeah, it does happen pretty often, especially when you move up the ladder a little bit more and you get more exposure to like why things are, and like you want to fix it, but like I think I agree with you, like you have to have one of three things in order to fix a problem. And it takes more than just one person at that point.
Yeah, I don't know that any of us know the answer. Obviously, this is something that people talk about a lot on healthcare. It's interesting to look at other models, other government models of healthcare in other nations.
Don't look at the military as healthcare.
Well, that's still sort of, and I mean, well, that's a good example because in some ways it's sort of a socialist setup. It's government funded and you get whatever you get basically.
Yeah.
But that's again why I think you got to strike a balance, because if you go to like government, like universal healthcare or something, or some guaranteed fundamental level healthcare, people are still going to fuss that it's not substantial enough and that people with more money are getting better health care or something, but that's just going to always be the case. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know the answer either. Like you were talking about that a lot of the problems that people have, you have pregnant women come in with health issues, and you did say it's a lot of times life choices. Part of that's because we've been fed by both big food and big pharma, that it's just like you and I discuss all the time. I eat carnivore diet now.
Is it good?
I eat. I think it's good. Meat.
Like, do you feel good though?
Yeah, I feel better. I'm in better shape. Now my cholesterol's high, but I think we've been fed that your cholesterol you shouldn't have high cholesterol. And although I get that there's a correlation between high cholesterol and heart disease, I think that we've been fed so much by big food wanting us to eat processed stuff that they, think about it. Just over the last 30 years, we went from we were not supposed to have milk, avoid saturated fat, all these things that I don't think are accurate, and instead let's eat all this processed junk, and now we have all these autoimmune disorders that we didn't used to have. We got heart disease is crazy, all these things, especially
plastics
in America.
is another big one, like all the plastics in your food.
Yeah, and then you got the good pre-workout that you can drink all the time. Anyway,
she banned me from those. I'm not allowed to have them anymore.
That's my last big vice. Like I had bourbon for the first time. I hadn't had bourbon in like 5 weeks since we left the restaurant. And I had some last night, and it was it hit me because I haven't been drinking it. But like these, I'm addicted to.
Are those the Celsius or the?
These are pre-workouts. It's Amino Energy, and I drink 3 of them a day. It's bad. It's like 6 cups of coffee.
I remember as long as you came in with an 8-ounce Red Bull in your hand.
I used to be addicted to the Red Bull.
Teaching the tiny tigers, I was like, it's going to be a good day.
It's
if you didn't have the Red Bull,
it's trouble. You're right.
You might kill a kid. I don't know.
The Red Bull ended up burning a hole in my stomach.
Really?
Yeah, and in law school, I was having some serious issues, and that's what it was. So I managed to quit drinking any of that kind of stuff for like 6 months, but then the law school kind of mandated caffeine.
They're delicious.
Yeah, so I switched to this. Was very low. It's way different than the Red Bull. It's really just caffeine and amino acids. That's all it is. But anyway, so I digress. Well, I appreciate you ladies giving us some feedback on the healthcare stuff, because that's not something that I'm good at.
I have no experience in it.
I'm very interested in it though, because I think it's a big problem, and it's always interested me on the internet, on the national level, when the presidential elections and stuff, when they go to talking about healthcare.
Well, I think one of the shifts is if we could start shifting to a payer system that pays for prevention instead of.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Instead of paying for outcomes.
My idol Joe Rogan, he talked about that on his podcast a lot.
Rogan's podcast on prevention.
No, it's talking about how COVID. he was talking about on COVID how we're wanting to get everybody to take this shot. Why aren't we talking about how about not be fat?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how about be in better shape? Because if you look at them, they all had comorbidity factors. Most of them, a lot of the people that died from COVID had comorbidity factors that led to complications, right? So I'm not saying I took the shot, I'm vaccinated. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying, but why is the focus so much on that and not on, hey, let's be healthier?
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'm talking about is what he was saying.
They put the amount of resources into promoting healthy lifestyles and
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
people resources for healthy lifestyles. It could probably help out more.
Yeah,
think, so.
I think that would be good for everybody. So, do you not to change the topic, but I just thought about it. So you're an officer, so you eat better than everybody, right?
No, it's kind of a common misconception. And well,
He says that my son's enlisted.
Yeah,
he's eating the
that's-
bologna sandwich over there.
hey, they got bologna sandwiches in the officers' mess. No, we just have separate dining facilities. More on the like, if you're on a ship, you'll have you have the wardroom, which is like where the officers eat, and then you have where the enlisted eats. But a lot of the enlisted end up working in the wardroom on kind of like a shift thing. I don't know if your son's told you about that. They call it mess duty, where they actually go and they cook and clean inside where the officers live. So, but for I've eaten in both. I always, that's my thing too, is like when I was on ships, I would always go down and have lunch or dinner with my guys too. Cause if we eat around the same time, sometimes I just won't eat in the wardroom. I'll go down and eat in the mess decks. And another thing, like self-awareness and perspective and stuff, if you're going to lead somebody, you got to know how they live and, what goes through their mind. When I was on the ship, one of the benefits of being on a smaller ship was, I don't want to say it's a benefit, but you get a little bit more perspective than you would on the bigger ships, because on the bigger ships like a carrier, there's all sorts of accommodations, and the separation of rank it's easier because there is more space, if that makes sense. Where on the smaller ships, for example, when I was there as a young 01, there wasn't enough room for us where all the officers stay, so they put us in this overflow berthing, basically down in deck berthing, which is like, where a large pool of the enlisted are. So I was sleeping in deck berthing for 16 months of my first tour, and I feel like that gave me a lot of perspective, because you're not up there with all the officers, you're down below with everybody else. So that type of perspective has carried throughout my career. Like I try to never lose sight of, hey, it's not what I see every day is not what everybody else sees every day. It's not what goes through their mind every day. So, but yes, I wouldn't say the food's different though. It's the same menu. It's just served to you differently, I guess. But they bring out the caviar every once in a while.
Yeah. So it's funny because Brian, who I can't believe you haven't really met him, got to know him. Brian was Air Force officer.
Oh, he's eating good then.
He left as a major.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And he told me one time that he was in, I want to say Iraq, maybe. Somewhere around there, Saudi Arabia. I don't know where. It was wherever there was an Air Force base over there.
Qatar. I've done a tour there.
Maybe that's where it was.
Yeah.
He said he's over there, and it was mostly. It might have even been. It was either an Army or Air Force, or not Air. It was not an Air Force base. They were there for some kind of support deal. So they get there, and there's no internet or no like separate place for them.
Yeah.
So they called their supervisor, and like the next day, they had built out this whole tent section just for them, and had flown in a TV and set up internet and stuff for them, so they could like watch. And he said it was just the two of them,
Yeah.
so they're just sitting there, and everybody else is sleeping like in the sand.
That's the Air Force for you,
Yeah.
though. They get the good stuff.
Yeah, he did say that they had better accommodations usually. But.
Yeah, the Air Force, if I could do it all over again, I might. I don't know. I can't bring myself to say I'd join the Air Force, but seeing I've worked with a lot of Air Force intelligence and things like that, and I'm just like, man, y'all do it right.
I don't know if I told you, I got to do, it wasn't a Tiger cruise, but I got to do one of the day cruises.
Oh, on the carrier?
Yeah, on the carrier, and they did an air show out there. Well, aside from the fact that I had to let the lawyer in me lay down a second because of all the liability, because the Navy didn't care. But they had 500 parents on the flight deck with a live flight show. I'm talking about that jet was probably from here to that door, and the cable.
Did you feel the
catching
heat?
them. Oh yeah. And that thing, I didn't, until you're there and experience it. Again, y'all would take it for granted seeing it, but I had never been that close to that kind of stuff. And that thing took off, and then I didn't realize how bad the ship will list.
Yep.
While that thing's coming in like a freaking Raptor,
Yep.
just that plane, and then I was so impressed with those pilots able to land and take off like that.
And they do it at night too. It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
They did it over and over while we were there. They would land it, pull it back, the burn thing or whatever it is behind it, turn around, take back off. It was very impressive. Anyway, that wasn't my point. I forgot what my point was going to be. I got distracted by the jets. That's what I was going to say. I told Brian after the fact that I used to think because Air Force specializes in airplanes, they must be the best. But those Navy pilots, man,
pretty impressive.
Very impressive. I mean, I think it's arguable they're the best to be able to land under those conditions.
Yeah. And they mess up too sometimes. You know, like planes go in the drink sometimes. And I mean, they had one of the F-35s went over the side. That was
but wasn't it the Air Force that lost one? Who was it that lost?
That was the Marine Corps.
Was it Marine Corps?
Yeah.
Okay, they lost it. It's like, hey guys, we're looking for a jet.
Yeah, it's if you see it, call this number.
$7 billion plane. Let me know where it's at.
That's unfortunate, and things like that happen. I mean, it's a hard profession, but
I
couldn't imagine.
Dogging on them.
I couldn't imagine trying to land on a carrier. I've seen it many times, and it impresses me every time I see it. I've actually gotten to go up in a double-seater F-18 before and fly around and go for a ride before, and it was. How
are those G's?
I picked the right profession, on the ground, and not, the air sickness it gets to you, all to them for doing stuff like that. But I could see where they get addicted to it. Super fun, but a lot of training, and I don't know if I would want to do that over the water though. And at night, I don't know how they do it at night. I've seen a lot of videos. I've watched them do it at night, and they basically do it blind. I know the jets now are pretty sophisticated. They can kind of go on glide slope and stuff, almost like on autopilot and automatically, but it's not for me.
Yeah, it's so scary.
And that's one thing I like about my profession. I've touched almost every, call them warfare areas, but every kind of section of the Navy. I've kind of worked with and done intelligence work with almost every aspect of the Navy, whether it be aviation, surface warfare, expeditionary, special warfare, the SEALs. I've kind of touched every little piece of it, so that's one thing I like about it. It's pretty dynamic in that sense.
How long have you been in now?
Coming up on 9 years.
And so you talk about it, your profession. You plan on staying career?
Since I picked up Lieutenant Commander, I think I might stick it out for a little bit longer. They're actually going to send me to in D.C. National Intelligence University to get my master's degree. So I'm going to, if the Navy pays for my master's, I might just stick around and because I'll have to do a couple more years after that anyways. But it's been good to me, and it's given me a lot of things in life, and I actually have no qualms with, the hardest part about the military is the moving around. So, but I kind of grew up that way with my mom anyway. My sister hates it. She never wanted any part of it, but I always saw it as kind of an adventure. The moving is hard. The deployments can be hard. We just started our relationship. I went on a 5 or 6 month deployment. So, that's kind of the unfortunate part, but, and it can be like you go on deployment and you have, just like with your son, you have no contact for 2 or 3 months, and I guess that's the hardest part. It can be hard on relationships and families and stuff, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I don't really have any qualms with the lifestyle, to be honest.
Nice. And then I would assume there's good options in the private sector once you get out when you're intel.
There is, and actually the Navy intel community has, I'm going to say a retention problem, but because just like in any trade, the more they train somebody in a specialty that is needed, the outside civilian world, you don't have to move anymore. You can make the same amount of money or more. So it becomes very attractive to people, especially young officers that they don't know if they want to stay in to make 04 and above. That they're like, hey, I got my 6 years of experience in leadership at a departmental level. This company, this 3-letter agency says that I can come in at making 110, which is more than I make as you make as an 02 or an 03. And you're like, heck yeah, I'll do it. I can stay in one place for the next 10 years and not move. I'll do it. So. It becomes pretty hard to keep people around, especially as you get like 04 and above, because they can just get out. But I think that it does make it special in the sense that people that do stay do it because they like the military and they like what it does. So, and I've loved it so far. So
well, good. Well, I guess I got one last question I'll ask you if it didn't lead to some tangent, which happens. And I've asked this of my son. I'm curious to hear what you say, and you may not be able to answer it. But the question is, from your perspective as an officer in the military. You're going to give me a biased answer. As I ask the question, I realize it's going to be a biased answer. Do you feel that our military is still the superior military in the world?
That's a tough one. And it's kind of a nuanced answer, yes and no. Especially as, what I can say is, I do study other nations' militaries and their geopolitical situations. I'm supposed to be an expert in them in many different regards. But there are other nations, and to downgrade and downplay other world powers and their military capability, their intentions, and things like that, is, as you would think. Mayoda Musashi said, "Never, you don't want to underestimate your adversary." And that couldn't be more true with a lot of the superpowers. Is there's some things that they are much better at, and have the advantage on, but there are still a lot of things that I would say that we have the historical advantage on. If we take China for example, like they're one of the number one superpowers or aspiring superpowers in the world right now with military R&D. And I'll say like their capability to build out different programs and develop things and push it out to their military force and build up the military force. And this is something you can Google. They've outpaced us for the last 10 years astronomically, and that's something we've been aware of. But we still hold a tactical advantage and an operational and a strategic advantage on our capability of employing. So we have the experience, basically. They study what we've done through our warfare history, through World War II, Vietnam, whether we were successful or unsuccessful, and all of the years that we spent in Iraq and the Middle East. That's still experience we have employing global forces, doing aircraft carrier operations in combat. So, we have that. They know that we have that operational capability and experience. So the short answer is yes, most definitely in some ways. Other nations do outpace us in different regards and do have their strengths that come over us, but we also have our own that I think it kind of balances out, to be honest, because we do have our shortcomings, especially you'll read about, we have the F-35s and stuff, but our ship's getting older. We're trying to build a new fleet, things like that. But, China's cranking out new destroyers and carriers of their own, like clockwork, like that we haven't really kept up with. So, I definitely try not to give a biased answer because it's definitely not a biased answer. It's a nuanced one, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think, though, one thing that people underestimate is the problem with America for other nations, and this is any other nation or hostile force, would be occupying us. Because we got rednecks and we got gangbangers.
Yeah, everyone has a gun.
Everybody, more than one gun.
Yeah.
So it's not like any other nation where you would go in. And as much as I think the biggest mistake a foreign force could do is unify all of the different entities in America. Because, a lot of times your rednecks would be normally think they would be adversaries to the gangbangers. But if somebody come in hostile, they would unify, and that would be a problem.
I mean, it's the same thing that we experienced in Afghanistan for 20 years. Whether people think that's there's a political center around that of how people feel about that. But I mean, that's the same thing as we spent 20 years pretty much trying to build relationships and influence, and make a democracy, more or less there. And it was just the guerrilla warfare that took place there, and the factions like you're talking about that held us in peril there for 20 years just from that. And they had some of those groups were very limited in their ability. Some of them, of course, funded through different proxies, of course, but it's not like the amount of density of armed civilian here definitely is way more than you would say in some of the places that we experienced so much trouble in. Afghanistan was never successful. In every war that they've been in, they've actually come out on top between us and Russia. So I could only imagine how hard it would be for an occupying country as well. I think I think a lot of countries look at that and they do scratch their heads a little bit of how, if we were going to do it, how would we do it? And to tell the truth, we have really good homeland defense. I mean, the Department of Homeland Security is actually really good with setting up protection for the country, and of course the different military capability we have for doing that. So
yeah, Americans are just different. And I don't know if you've gotten to experience this traveling, but when I did my traveling abroad, especially in Asia, you can tell an American.
Yeah.
Like in Europe, a lot of times they may look like an American, but you can just physically.
Yeah.
But as soon as they move or talk, you're like, oh, that's an American.
Especially from the South. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not gonna-
yeah, yeah.
You're
But
you're from Louisiana. I
We're
can tell.
louder. We're always way overconfident.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't care about your country. We're going to tell you about our country. You know, like, it's just Americans are so, I joke about it, but
It's true.
It's a endearing quality sometimes, I think. And I just think that, I think people worry a whole lot about the international stage. I have my own political views on what we should or shouldn't do and all that.
Definitely.
But you know, ultimately, I think that we're very blessed to be here. You know, I think we're very blessed to be in a nation that has people like you that are awesome humans and that are willing to go out there, you and my son, and willing to sacrifice really their life, not just actually their lives, but literally your life. Like, you're there for all these years, and I think people take it for granted. Their ability to run their mouth, everybody watching this, to talk smack about my hair or to talk smack about any component of whatever we do is a freedom that other nations, many other nations don't have. And the reason we have it is because of you guys.
Thank you.
So
Really
it's
appreciate
very, a very honorable thing you're doing.
You know, I was talking to my dad about this a second ago. 'Cause you know my dad is crazy views and stuff, and he was like, you know, I think everybody should have to join the military for 2 years, you know, right when they graduate high school. You know, he goes on his rant or whatever, and I'm like, Dad, you're wrong. Like, I completely disagree with that. And he's like, I thought you would agree with that. I'm like, no. The reason our military is the way it is and our government service is so strong and the capabilities we have is because we have a volunteer force. Is we have the ability for people to say, I want to do this. I want to spend my time doing this. I think it's a mission that I want to fulfill and a call that I want to answer instead of being forced into it.
Yeah.
So I definitely, like, you know, we are lucky in a country. Of course, there's always, you know, the draft situation, but time of war or whatever. But for the most part, our service is 100% volunteer, and government service is the same way. So I definitely think that is one strong suit of our country.
Yeah, I do think, though, we need to do better on taking care of y'all. Because, like, I've seen Alex's paycheck, and, of course, yours would be different as an officer, and I've also seen how I'm frustrated that he has to pay for his food and uniform and all. I thought that was all given to him. I didn't know that it comes out of the check.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's crappy. And so, of course, I have no ability right now to make any change on it. But if I did, that's one of the things that needs to be addressed. There's no reason why you should be the best paid, the best outfitted, and you know, the best health care, all these things for these people that are frontline defense for us.
Well, I'd love to talk to Alex. I think he would do well as an officer. I think if he ever wanted to go that route, I would definitely like to talk to him about it because, you know, I know him growing up. And he's a good kid, and I watched him teach classes. I watched him as a leader. And I think he would do well if he transitioned over, you know, if he let the Navy get him a degree. And then, you know, if the special warfare thing didn't work out, because I know he's still trying to gun for that one. I think he could do it. But I definitely think he would make a good officer and a good leader. So,
well, as his father, I mean, I'm proud of him either way. And, you know, if he's but I do worry. Like, when he first got in that program, I literally had nightmares.
Yeah.
Like, I think I may have told you I started doing I did that marathon training. I started running. I literally got up. He left like February 1st. It snowed real bad the next week, and I was like really struggling with him being gone because Alex is my oldest, and he's the first of my children that I had that was like gone, and I didn't have the ability to protect him.
yeah.
And my whole adult life, I've been a father.
Yeah.
And so I was really struggling with my own identity, to be honest. And so I got up, put on all these clothes, and was running in the snow. I ran like 7 or 8 miles crying the whole time. So
Dang.
I'm sure if somebody was driving by there, look at this crazy guy. And I was like, I love you, son. Like, you know, like David Goggins in the snow. And then I was like, I'm going to run a marathon for him. And so I made these that say, we got you, Alex. Carry the boats.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I had a little running group I developed, all because I was it was a way for me to try to be okay with the fact that I saw evil as a cop. So I could only imagine what service people can see abroad.
Yeah.
And I was really struggling with the fact that my son might deal with evil on a level that I hadn't, and then I wasn't there to protect him.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think about that anytime I see any military service person and how I feel like often are underappreciated by fellow Americans.
Appreciate that.
It pisses me off. Yeah, because people don't realize. I know how I was changed as a cop, and so the thing that service people see, especially people front lines, I can only imagine. But even people that are in the drone thing, having to see all that and then do that at a distance, is still got to mess with you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Like, I've definitely got PTSD. Definitely messed up.
Well, I remember that one time, I don't know how you would do it. You would come to the school and you would, no matter what happened that day from being a police officer, you would never let it phase you. Because one time we were standing there, we were about to teach class, and I noticed this, like, half bleeding, like, soaked in blood garment on your arm. And I'm like, Mr. Mason, what happened to you? And you're like, oh, a crackhead threw a machete at me. And I'm like,
Still got the scar from it. I got the scar on my arm.
Just coming to teach the Tiny Tigers right after some dude chucked a machete at your head. Like,
yeah, it wasn't long after that I realized that it was a little bit after that maybe. When I finally decided I needed to do something else is I kicked a door in on a guy that was armed, and I just walked up in there with a taser, and it was because I was like, I'm the police, you know.
That's what I do.
And then the gun was pointed right at me. I'm very lucky he didn't shoot me. And I was like, I backed out. All the other cops were hiding on the side of the house. And when I walked up, this guy had busted the windows out of the top window and had shot out everywhere. And when I got there, we couldn't get him on the radio. I'm the supervisor. So I get there, and they're hiding on the side of the house stacked up. And I go, what are you doing? They go, well, he got a gun. I was like, but you're the police. You know? So I go, boot, kick the door in. I go in there, and then he's got the gun. I was like, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. And they go, he told you he's got a gun. And I realized that was a mistake. Yeah, I needed to do something different because I wasn't scared at all, which is a problem. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
I was just desensitized to the whole thing.
How about afterwards, like when you sat down and thought about it, did it come
I
back
realized
to you,
that, I realized how close that I came to probably dying right then.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I just wasn't afraid. I felt like I was the best one to handle it. I could handle it. I was going to handle it. And then, but I stopped getting, I vividly remember my first traffic stop, not to keep getting on tangents, which I said I would do. But my first traffic stop was a preacher. It was a van. One morning, a Sunday morning, I stopped this van by myself. First one I did alone. And I remember I was shaking because it was Sunday morning, and this guy, he gets out of the van, which is a bad sign.
Yeah.
And it's just because he was an older guy, and he wanted to talk to me about what was up. And I was like, sir, stop, get back in your vehicle. And all that. And I remember being so nervous. And then fast forward to, I pulled over a carload of burglars that had just broken a house. They're all armed. There's 5 of them. And I get out and challenge all of just not that because I was bad. It was that you get desensitized to those different environment. And then you start seeing you have a dark sense of humor too, that you'll make jokes and other people are like, what's wrong with this guy? And you're like, oh, I thought it was funny, Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, it changes you. And I think that military guys and girls can relate to that because the experiences. I think with healthcare, part of reason why she and I think, hit it off well is she was an ER nurse. And specifically with ER nurses, they see a lot of trauma. I was seeing a lot of trauma, and so we would joke, and she would get the jokes because we were dealing with the same kind of trauma. And I think that's a lot of times why you have cops and nurses, that end up together in different. So I'm trying to say a way that sometimes they're not initially together; they're with other people, but then they end up together because, they can relate to what's going on.
That makes sense. Do you think that affects a lot of the cases that you've seen as a lawyer, like that desensitization of the job itself, like landing a lot of cops in hot water or just like situations is like part of the job? Has that ever been a defense that you've used, like, I've been there, I know how it is kind of thing?
I don't know if it's been there for me to defend the cops because I use it in the way I know what they did or didn't do, but it's more that I don't want to say rose to prominence, but gained a lot of experience that other lawyers haven't as a defense lawyer quickly because I was already acclimated to extreme stress. So, like, a lot of lawyers will go their whole career and not have one jury trial. It's one of the most stressful things they would do. My first jury trial was 3 days after I was licensed as a lawyer, my very first one.
Really?
And at this point, I've lost count of how many I've done. I mean, murder trials, rape trials, all kinds of jury trials, and won them. So go and win them. So I think part of that is my ability to be desensitized to the fact that I'm defending someone accused of some very heinous things, and I'm able to sit back, I do my job, and I want to win, But sometimes a win is not getting them off at a trial. Sometimes it's getting them a good plea agreement, if the stuff's bad, if the facts are bad and the evidence is bad. But, yeah, I think that has helped me as a defense lawyer because, like I was just telling y'all when you first walked in, that I get a lot of there's a lot of hostility towards me a lot of times. That really should be for my client maybe, but I get it because I'm defending this person. So, yeah.
Have you ever seen Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks?
I don't think so.
I think you should watch it. It's I don't say an older movie. It's a younger Tom Hanks, but he is a young self-defense attorney that has to defend a Russian KGB spy that was apprehended for espionage, and he has to do a defense trial for him, and he's experiencing all that hate, and it's kind of like it's based on a true story too. And then he ends up, spoiler if you haven't seen it. I mean, I think this movie's been out for a while, but he gets contracted by the CIA to help broker a deal between an agreement for a prisoner exchange, because this guy trusts him, and the government trusts him because he's worked with them. And he ends up going to Berlin to do a prisoner swap. But I'll leave it at that. I don't want to spoil it for everybody. But it reminded me of that he's a defense attorney, and he holds true to that. Everyone deserves the right, regardless of what they've done. And that's the only way that our justice system works, is to have both sides of it and to have fair representation. But like, people are attacking him, throwing bricks in his house, going after his family.
Yeah, well, the thing that I get frustrated with that is they are innocent until and unless they're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
They are innocent. So like, I've had clients that I've gone on record saying, yes, they maintain their innocence because they're innocent. Legally, they're innocent until they're proven guilty. And like John Adams, imagine back in the American Revolution, he defended the British in the what was the Boston Massacre shooting. Nobody else wanted it. That would be like representing Hamas now, or Al Qaeda. Like, he couldn't. And he was so strongly believed in the right to represent fair trial and representation that he represented these British that arguably, at the time, they thought had killed their they're like occupying force that had killed their brethren. And he stepped up, and of course he became second president eventually. But he realized, just as I realize, it is a fundamental right under our Constitution for people to get a fair trial and have a fervent defense. Not just a lawyer that's standing there by them, but a lawyer that has done all that was possible to defend their rights. No matter what color they are, what sexuality they are, what pronouns they use, none of that matters. They're a human being that deserves a right to be defended. And that doesn't mean that we get them off all the time, like I said. But if I have any bias on that, or allow any of that to play into my position, whether they actually did the offense or not, then to me the system doesn't work. And if you don't have lawyers that think that way, that's scary to me. So anyway, I kind of take the hate as a red badge of courage when people, and also to me it's some ignorance, because it's all fun and games till you're accused of something.
Yeah, and then you're wishing that you had somebody in your corner.
Yeah. So, and then I figured that those people eventually might come back. So I don't judge. I don't hate anybody else that throws the hate this way. Sometimes I feel bad for them for thinking that way, but I understand my job. I understand the assignment, and then I'm just going to do the assignment. So for the moment. So anyway. All right. Well, I've taken enough of y'all's time, and I'm sure you want to use what? Are you going back Sunday? But you're not going to, like, you're stationed somewhere now, right?
Yeah, I'm stationed in D.C. in Washington,
nice,
D.C.
nice.
So I'm up there, so we'll drive back, and I'll be home. Well, this is home. But
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. Cool.
And
cool.
back to the grind.
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming in, Gunnar,
Thanks
and
for having
one
me.
visiting, but two, even doing the podcast and stuff
definitely.
with me. So it was very very good to see you. I told him, Madeline, and maybe tomorrow. Of course, I got to go to that funeral. But after that, she's got testing in Millington, too. There's Taekwondo testing tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
And after that, we might be able to hook up with them for lunch or something if they're around.
I'd love to.
Josh is going through our ads there. Of course, download the Boys album and follow us on.
Got to that
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I missed it.
It's just
follow us on Kickin Lawyer on Instagram. That's Austin, my middle boy. You remember Austin? The one on the right? That's him there. Anyway, that's his band, N.A. the Band. And they do have a great album out, Inside My Head. It's free. Just download that.
Nice.
And Michelle Allen is a longtime sponsor of the show. Buying, selling, renting, leasing real estate. Holler at her. She'd be glad to help you out. And then, of course, we talked about Mason's High Octane Martial Arts that Gunnar is a product of. We've been open since '93 and now have the second location in Millington. You just visit masonsmartialarts.com. We have some 30-year anniversary specials going on. Then the new business I'm working on is Jam Books and Records. That's why I got all those records over there and books in the hallway. Hopefully that place will be open soon. You guys can check us out on the Square in Covington. And then Josh will help you with your online branding, website design, commercials, drone footage. Just visit masonitemarketing.com. And we will hope to see you again on another Law Talk. Again, we try to do them every Tuesday at 5, or at least pre-record and post them for you every Tuesday at 5. And we'll see you guys next time. Keep kicking. Thanks for watching, guys. Just remember that this is not legal advice or investment advice or business advice. This is for fun and entertainment purposes only.